Hello, everyone. This is Southern Bell Whisper. I hope you all are doing well today. Um, Today is kind of a bad day for me. I'm not feeling well still at all. It's my fourth day with symptoms, and today's a bad day. I thought it was going to be a better day, but my nose is very stopped up, and I just feel like poo. I've already called out of work for tonight because I really don't want to take the chance that I'm actually very sick. I am very sick, but I don't want to take the chance that it is the big C and I uh, spread it to my patients or my coworkers because a lot of people are getting sick right now, and I don't want to be the cause of somebody getting sick. So I decided to do a different type of video. I don't usually do true crime videos, but I don't think this. Okay, I'm going to show her a picture because there's a lot of ads, and I think it's just okay. There it is. But that's her picture, and I don't usually do true crime videos, and this is probably not going to be the best true crime video because being sick, I haven't had time to research this specific true crime, but I have read a book about it, and I've seen TV shows about it multiple times, and I also found uh, something called the Crime Wire, where it has pretty much the exact details. So I'm cheating a little bit, but I always found, well, for one thing, I am a big fan of true crime ASMR videos. Um, I guess I'm just a little morbid in that way. But I've always found true crime to be so interesting, and I don't think anybody has ever done a true crime on this specific person. So, since it's Halloween and it's my favorite month, I thought I would try for you guys. I got my friend's blanket covering me up. So I'm nice and cozy while I talk about this true crime. And I'm going to read it word for word from the forum that I found. But the girl, the victim in this case, her name was Crystal FAYE TODD. And so, and she was 17 years old. And this also happened in Conway, South Carolina, which is right near where I live. It's about a 15 or 20-minute drive. So we haven't had that many true crime cases happen here. We did have the Heather Elvis case happen right down the road from me. But other than that, no high profile true crime cases, but Crystal Faye Todd is one of those big true crime cases. One of the bigger ones. So let me start. So it says The Short Life of Crystal Faye Todd. In 1991, 17-year-old Crystal Faye Todd lived in the small tobacco farming town of Conway, South Carolina. Life was good for Crystal, with a future that held such promise. She was a high school senior who was well liked among her classmates and above average academically. Her mother, Bonnie Faye Todd, had recently given her a brand new 1991 Toyota Celica as an early graduation gift. It seemed nothing could dampen the spirits of the lively teenager. Enter Johnny Kenneth, or Ken, Register the Second, Crystal's best friend from childhood and the agent of chaos that would not only dampen her spirit, but extinguish it altogether. The night she disappeared. On the evening of November 16th, 1991, Crystal attended her grandmother's birthday party. She loved her grandmother dearly, but hanging with older folks wasn't really where Crystal wanted to be. After making a short appearance at the festivities, Crystal excused herself around 7 p.m. and kissed her mother goodbye. Bonnie Faye watched as the little car with the personalized license plate reading C. Todd disappeared out of sight. Crystal was headed to the mall to meet her friends. Within minutes of her arrival at the mall, Crystal found her friends, and they excitedly discussed their plans for the evening. Around 9 p.m., Crystal and one friend decided to go to a party in the Punch Bowl community where they stayed until 11 p.m. After dropping her friend off at home, Crystal rushed back to the mall to say goodbye to her other friends before meeting her midnight curfew. Midnight came and went, however, and there was no sign of Crystal Faye. So Bonnie Faye Todd alerts the authorities. Bonnie was a widow and had spent years parenting alone. She had fine-tuned the instincts that come naturally to most loving mothers. So when Crystal failed to come home by midnight and hadn't bothered to call and say she would be late, as she always did, Bonnie knew something was terribly wrong. Bonnie began calling Crystal's friends to find out if they knew where Crystal could be. The last reports of Crystal placed her at the Coastal Mall around 11:30 p.m. That's where I go to the movies. That's crazy. By 3 a.m., Bonnie had nowhere else to turn except the police. She dialed 911 and spoke with the dispatcher, who took down a description of the missing teenager in her car, along with details such as where Crystal had last been seen and with whom. The dispatcher could tell the mother was horribly upset, and he tried to reassure her that late teens weren't uncommon, but Crystal was sure to show up soon. He asked that Bonnie give him a call back when the teen came home, and Bonnie agreed she would. At 8 a.m., Bonnie FAYE frantically called 911 again. Two of Crystal's friends had reported her car was at Conway Middle School. An officer was dispatched to the location where he was met by the distraught mother who indicated the car was locked, but Crystal's purse was inside. There wasn't much the officer could do other than take a report and, like the dispatcher, try to reassure the worried woman that her daughter was probably just out with friends, having too much fun to call or come home. But Bonnie felt it deep inside. She knew Crystal wasn't just late in getting home. She couldn't explain how, but Bonnie knew Crystal wasn't coming home. On Sunday morning, November 17th, 1991, two men were driving just outside of Conway in the Maple community, ready for a day of hunting, when one of them noticed something odd lying in the ditch along the road. And this is where there might be some very gory details, upsetting details, triggering details. So if you, I should put this warning before the video, but I'm warning you now, if you are not above the age of 14, this info might be very upsetting to you. Getting out for a closer inspection, the men realized it was the body of a young woman. They immediately called the police, who arrived at the scene soon after. A veteran officer later said it was one of the worst things he'd ever seen. The first silent details investigators noticed included a trail of blood running from the roadway to the ditch, footprints, obvious signs of a struggle, and the position of the body, which indicated she had been thrown into the ditch. Authors Dale Hudson and Billy Hills describe the scene more graphically. In their 2006 book about the case, An Hour to Kill, a true story of love, murder, and justice in a small southern town. That is the book that I read twice. That book was insane. So this is where it gets gory. The victim had been found with her belt and blue jeans unfastened and pulled down around her hips. Her shirt was pulled open and torn, and her chest was exposed. There was a large amount of blood on her face and a gaping 3 to 4 inch opening across the throat area. The victim's throat had been slashed. There appeared to be several stab and slash wounds in the chest and abdomen area, and some inner body parts was protruding from her body. I'm sorry, that was very upsetting info. Because of the gruesome nature of the murder, the possibility of a satanic ritual killing was discussed, but quickly dismissed. Investigators did feel strongly, however, that this was a sex-motivated crime. Investigators went to notify Crystal's mother, hoping they would reach her before the media or anyone else. When they told Bonnie Faye that they were certain it was her daughter, having pulled from her hand a senior ring engraved with her name, the woman broke down into uncontrollable sobs. While the officers did not give Bonnie specifics about her daughter's death, they promised her that police would work around the clock to find her daughter's killer. The widow wasn't really listening. Her daughter was gone. She wasn't sure she cared about anything, especially about living. Bonnie had given birth to Crystal when she was 39 years old and viewed her daughter as a miracle. After a senseless murder, Bonnie told Forensic Files, "I don't really have a life anymore. I just exist. I go from one day to the next, and I don't even get out of bed and face another day. It's just hard, but it don't get any better." Medical examiner Dr. Jamie Downs conducted the autopsy of Crystal and found defensive wounds on her left hand. He found this odd given that Crystal was right-handed. He soon learned that the reason for this was that Crystal had been stabbed in her left skull, which paralyzed her right side. In total, Crystal was stabbed 31 times. The autopsy told investigators that Crystal was SM'd before she was killed and was alive and conscious during the attack. Some of the wounds, however, were made after she died, indicating the killer was especially enraged and probably knew the victim. Dr. Downs concluded that the murder weapon was a 3.5-inch knife with a locking mechanism. A profiler determined that based on the way the body was discarded, the proprietor had likely never killed before. Forensic scientists analyzed the SM kit conducted for Crystal and learned that the killer had type O blood with a rare enzyme PGM as well as an extremely rare DNA profile. By this time, Bonnie, whose grief had turned to anger, told the Ori Independent that she was certain Crystal's killer was someone she knew. The chief of police would later confirm that his investigators also believed Crystal knew her killer. After speaking with many of the girl's friends, they knew she was not the type to get into a car with someone she did not know. After digging into Crystal's notebooks and interviewing her friends, police had a promising initial suspect, a man named Andy Tyndall. Andy was married, but known to hang out with teenage girls. Apparently he and Crystal had been hanging out, and she might even have had a crush on him, likely unaware that he was wanted in Alabama for a felony. Law enforcement agents even pursued the suspect on foot in the woods of South Carolina. After apprehending him, however, the DNA profile established by Crystal's SM kit cleared Annie of any involvement with her death. Bonnie soon grew impatient with police. She knew they were working hard, but she wanted her daughter's killer found now. Fortunately, she received emotional support from Crystal's friends, particularly Crystal's best friend, Ken Register. Ken and Crystal had grown up together, and even as adulthood loomed on the horizon, they had remained close. While Bonnie may not have liked all of Crystal's friends, she was very fond of Ken. He was a good boy from a good family, a member of the Future Farmers of America, and a member of the high school football team. He had graduated in 1999 and was working a full-time construction job in nearby Garden City Beach, South Carolina. My parents used to live there. Ken was one of the first of Crystal's friends to be interviewed by police and was one of over 50 people who provide a DNA sample. While Ken's and other samples were sitting among the backlog state crime lab, Ken stayed in close touch with Bonnie, frequently being a shoulder to cry and rant on. Bonnie was thankful for Ken. He was a wonderful source of support during an incomprehensible, difficult time. For all their efforts, however, detectives still did not have a suspect. Since discovering Crystal's body, they had worked 16-hour days and hold on, sorry. For all their efforts, however, detectives still did not have a suspect. Since discovering Crystal's body, they had worked 16-hour days in perpetuity, gathering numerous pieces of evidence and interviewing over 400 people, but they continued to come up empty-handed. DNA evidence is regularly used now in criminal investigations, but back in 1991, it was still a fledgling technology. On February 15, 1991, the Conway Police Department received a call from the State Law Enforcement Division. They had matched DNA and men's bodily fluids samples taken from Crystal's body to a sample taken by detectives. Crystal's murder marked the first case in South Carolina that was solved by linking forensic DNA evidence from the victim to a suspect. The police immediately began a manhunt for Ken Register. On February 18, 1992, they found and arrested him. According to court documents, on the way to the police station, Ken twice asked for his mother and initially refused to be interrogated without her present. After several hours of interrogations, Ken finally broke down and confessed to the crime. He told investigators on the night Crystal died, they had unprotected, consensual sex. Kid claimed that when he had, uh, Crystal was furious and threatened cry rape if she became pregnant. Kid said he became outraged at Crystal screaming and insults. Before he realized what he was doing, he was stabbing her. Kid told investigators that when he came to his senses and realized what he'd done, he panicked. He pulled Crystal from his car, tossed her into the ditch, threw away the knife, and hurried home. A subsequent search of the Register home, where Kid still lived with his parents, recovered Crystal's car keys and newspaper clippings about the murder, among other things. When detectives went to Bonnie Faye's home to tell her of the arrest and confession, she was stunned. Although she recalled Kid had been apprehensive about the DNA samples he had given to police, Bonnie said she told Kid several times, "Kid, you don't have to worry about your blood samples. You didn't do it." Bonnie came to realize what too many families had already learned. Sometimes the killer is the one closest to us. But this is him now. Oh, he looks evil, Tony. This is a very long article, but I'm going to see if it. So, here's the sentence he got. In September 1992, Register was tried on the indecent exposure charges. It only took jurors 2 hours to return a guilty verdict. In January 1993, after deliberating for only 75 minutes, jurors in the trial for Crystal's death returned guilty verdicts on charges of sexual misconduct, kidnapping, and torture. And Kid Register was sentenced to life in prison. So, that is the heartbreaking story about Crystal Faye Todd and her best friend, Kid Register. He was actually one of the pallbearers at her funeral. Like, that's how fucked up this case was. He was actually one of the pallbearers at her funeral. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to see if they're. This is a younger picture of him. Oh, dick. I think this is the car. Her car. And here's another really pretty picture of her. It's so sad. You can't even trust anybody anymore. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. And I will put a warning in the description about this, by the way, just in case. And I will be feeling really rough now. I might go take a nap now. But I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will be talking to you guys soon.